Hey everyone, it's Carissa. Thanks for joining me today. In the December newsletter, I wanted to take a close-up look at the Tonic Nuvo drops. And I have several of the Nuvo drops here, and I have really had a great time playing with these. Now, these are fairly new to the Hutson store, and they're kind of like enamel dots in a bottle, which is super fun because you can control how large or how thick your enamel dots are, which makes them a perfect embellishment for mailing. Now, these Nuvo drops are available in a few different finishes. I just showed you the crystal drops there, and the crystal actually come in kind of a pearlescent and a shiny finish. I also just showed you that white one was a glitter one, and then finally, the jewel drops. Those jewel drops are really cool because they dry translucent. It's almost like glossy accents with color, but the consistency is a little bit thicker, so you can control how really thick you get this onto your project. Now, I love the packaging of these Nuvo drops because I love anything shiny, and they come with these super cool like jewel toppers, and they look adorable sitting out on your shelf. Now, before I started putting these onto my project, I kind of wanted to give myself a feel for this product. So in order to do that and to get a feel for how these colors are going to dry, I just created a little swatch sheet. So I wrote down the colors onto this piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock, and I'm just dropping out a few different drops. And you can see I'm kind of practicing how to get bigger and smaller drops, and I love that these have a ton of dimension. Now, here is the jewel drops, and these, like I said, dry translucent. They are really cool. And this looks really pink here, but it dried a little more intense and a little more red. So kind of keep that in mind. And if you wanted to, you could even create a little swatch book with 2x2 squares with all of your Nuvo drop samples on it. Now, this glitter one I really like. Now, a lot of people are going to think this is like stickles, but it's not because it has that kind of enamel base to it. You get a lot more dimension than you do with stickles. I find with the stickles, it kind of dries flat and you lose the dimension that you have on there, but these dry dimensional. Now, you can also drop these Nuvo drops onto a craft mat and then let them dry and then adhere them onto your surface with something like some multi-medium in the matte finish as well. Now, I did want to show you that if you drop 2 drops on the craft mat too close together, they will like kind of melt into each other and create one kind of blobby drop. So be sure that you give them plenty of space. Now, I thought it would be super fun to take this wreath from the Homespun Holiday Essentials by Ellen stamp set and do a little bit of embellishing with these Nuvo drops. So I'm starting out by just stamping these wreaths onto some Neenah Solar White cardstock, and I'm using the Memento Tuxedo Black ink because I will be doing a little bit of Copic coloring just on the bow. And then I'm going to run these through my die cut machine using the coordinating die to get that cut out. Now for the bow, I am just going to create a pink bow. You saw I have very feminine and pastel-y colors in my Nuvo drop, so I'm going to be kind of creating a really nice pastel, kind of feminine version of this wreath here. So I decided to go ahead and color my bow pink. I am using the R00 and the RV11 Copic markers. I started by just coloring all over that bow with the R00 and then just going in and adding my shading with the RV11. And then going back over it and blending it out with the R00 again. So now that my wreath is ready, it is time for the fun part, and I'm going to start adding these Nuvo drops. Now, practice did make a little bit of perfect on this because I figured out that it was best to kind of go around the edge of each of these ornaments or kind of baubles that are on this wreath and then kind of fill in the center. So you'll see me drawing kind of a line with the Nuvo drop bottle right around the edge of that circle shape there and then filling in the middle by kind of pulling that product in towards the center. Now, like I said before, you can control how thick or how thin you want these. And if you put it on thicker, it's going to dry more dimensional. And if you put it on a little bit thinner, it's going to dry less bulky and less dimensional. So I am using a variety of colors of these Nuvo drops for my wreath here. I'm using the Neptune, the Wisteria, the Bubblegum Blush, which is like my absolute favorite of all of these that I got. I think it's like the perfect pink, and it is super shiny. It doesn't have the pearlescent finish like the others do, and I love it. And I also mixed in a little bit of those glitter drops as well, just to add some sparkle and shine. Now, after I finished putting all of my Nuvo drop accents onto my wreath, I took that wreath and I put it like 500 miles away from where I'm working because it needed some time to dry. It takes quite a bit of time because it is quite dimensional. And I did not want to mess it up on my table by like putting my finger in it, which Lord knows I do all the time. So while that was drying, it gave me an opportunity to work on the card front that I'll be applying this to. And I thought it would be cool to just kind of keep that really feminine, kind of light pastel-y theme going on. So I used a little bit of Distress ink in Spun Sugar and Tattered Rose, and I kind of blended it onto this card front here. And then I'm using the Christmas Scribbles stamp set. Now, you all know that this is like one of my favorite Christmas stamp sets ever. And I'm stamping it onto this card front here. Now, I originally tried to stamp it in the Unicorn White pigment ink, but there was not enough contrast. So I grabbed the Avery Elle Meant to Be pigment ink, and I stamped quite a few of these bows all over the background. And I love the way that that mint and pink look together. If you wanted to create a more traditional feel for this card, you could just use some reds and greens and whites and golds for your color combination, and that would change up the entire look of this card. So once I have all of my bows stamped onto my card front, I'm using another wreath to kind of get my bearings for where I want to stamp my sentiment. And I'm just using the Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas sentiment. It is also from the Christmas Scribbles stamp set. And I'm using my Misty so that I don't totally ruin this card front that I've created. And I'm just inking it up in some VersaFine Onyx Black pigment ink and then stamping it onto the front of my card. Now, I know you are all going to ask me, why didn't you just put the Nuvo drops on and then die cut the wreath? It would have been easier to kind of handle the wreath had that been the order of steps. But by running it through the die cut machine, I was really afraid that I was going to press down the dimension of those drops and then possibly make some marks in it. So it's probably best to do your die cutting first and then add your drops. So now on to the second card. I thought I would combine the Holly Jolly stamp set with the Fat Pants. I love this Fat Pants stamp set, and kind of create a retro themed card. So what I've done here is I've chosen the stamps that I want to use. I've aligned them onto my Misty, and then I used my phone to take a picture of how I have this all aligned so that I can recreate it. Because, you know, if I blink once or if I get distracted at all, I won't remember how I had these and how I wanted them. So I'm starting out by stamping the sentiment onto this Nina Solar White card front. This is a piece of 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch cardstock, and I'm just using the Hero Arts black ink for that. And then without even re-inking the stamp, I'm just stamping that sentiment onto a piece of the Inkadinkado stamp masking paper. And then I'm going to use my scissors to kind of trim around the sentiment because I'm going to be doing a little masking. I didn't want to stamp over the sentiment because I wanted the sentiment to feel like it's in the foreground. So by masking this off, those ornaments will kind of go behind that. And I just kind of carefully trimmed around. You're going to see it's not perfect, but I think the results are really cool. I love the retro feel that I got on this card. So now it's time to stamp the ornaments, and I'm pulling out my phone to figure out where I had these all positioned before. I'm going to put my ornaments in place kind of in relation to where I had them originally, and I'm just using kind of some landmarks on my sentiment there to kind of figure out where these ornaments go. And then I accidentally hit my screen and tried to text message it to somebody, so had to fix that. And once I have them where I want, I can set my phone aside because I am notorious for getting ink and glitter and shimmer spritz all over my phone. So I'm going to set that aside. And then I've chosen some Avery Elle pigment inks to stamp these ornaments. And I'm using the aquamarine ink for this long kind of skinny ornament here. You're going to see that when I inked that ornament up, I got a little bit onto this kind of shorter, squattier ornament. So I'm just wiping it off with a baby wipe and then drying it with my hand. And then I'm going to ink this ornament up with the Avery Elle Raspberry pigment ink. Now, finally, for that little kind of asterisk or star shape that's up there on the top of this kind of cluster of stamps. I'm going to ink that up in the Avery Elle Fog pigment ink. And then I'm going to take all of these, because this is a pigment ink, I have plenty of time before these dry. And I'm just going to flip it over and stamp them onto my card project. Now, I like to pull my sleeve over the heel of my hand and kind of rub it along the top of my MISTI, because I get a little bit of kind of sliding action, and I feel like I get those pressed on really well. And you're going to see that my pigment inks are a little bit dry. They need to be re-inked. So I'm just going to ink these up again and re-stamp them right over the top. That's the beauty of the MISTI. You can stamp it right in the same spot, and I'm just going to intensify that ink by double stamping them since they're a little bit dry. I've had them for quite a while, so it's probably time to re-ink them. Now, once I was happy with the way everything was stamped, you're going to see me pull my sleeve over my hand again. Get you a little bit of sliding action going on there. Always wear long sleeves when you're using the MISTI so that you can, pull them over the heel of your hand and slide your hand along the top of the MISTI. It's my new rule, long sleeves and MISTI. Anyway, after this dried, I'm just going to go through with this bubblegum blush Nuvo drops here, and I am just going to add some accents to the ornament. Now, you can make these as big or as small as you want, and just keep in mind that the teeny tiny drops they take a little more practice than the larger drops. It's easier to kind of blob them on kind of big. So I went around that long skinny ornament with my little pink drops here, and I just accentuated those little dots that are around the center of that. And then I also added some accents to that shorter, squattier one. I put some dots in the center of those little openings on the ornament. I accentuated the top lines, and then I put some drops all over the background, just like I would some enamel dots. And I'm just letting that dry. And then I'm going to go ahead and assemble my wreath onto the card front that I created earlier. So in order to do that, I am just adding a double layer of foam adhesive to the back of my wreath. And you did see me blend on a little bit of pink ink so that it wasn't stark white in the center, since I have a pink background going on. And then I can just remove the backer from my foam tape and position this onto my card front. Now, to finish off my other card here, I allowed those Nuvo drops to dry, and you do want to give these quite a bit of time. And the time is going to depend on not only your climate where you live, but how thick you put them onto your card project. So you'll just kind of have to get a feel for that as you use them. I went ahead and used my T-square ruler to draw on some little strings for those ornaments, and I hand drew the little bows that are on the top. And now I'm just going to finish these cards off by adding just a strip of some black and white pattern paper. I actually created those with a background stamp and my VersaFine Onyx Black pigment ink. So I've just added that little strip of black and white cardstock along the side and mounted these onto some card bases. And there you can see the nice dimension you get with these Nuvo drops. So as always, I will have links to all the products used in these projects over at the In Touch blog, where you can see more still shots and find more information. I hope you enjoyed this closer look at these Nuvo drops and got some ideas for using them on your card projects. They come in a variety of colors, so you'll want to be sure that you check them all out. Here's a look at that wreath card that I created, and I just love all the shine and dimension, and you can really see the difference between the pearlescent finish and the shiny finish. And I'll have more detail shots over at the In Touch blog, so you can check those out. Thanks for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed these projects, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.